In Part 3 of Lecture 10, we will discuss malware. Most programs on our computers are there to make the task of computing easier, and some are there to make computers fun. But there are programs that others look to install on our computers that seek to do us harm. These malevolent programs are appropriately called malware. Malware is all about doing us harm in one way or another. These negative actions are called malware exploits or payload. While there are other forms of malware, the most common forms are viruses, worms, and Trojan horses. There are other forms of malware as well. Adware displays irritating messages and pop-up ads on your screen. Ransomware encrypts your data and demands ransom for the encryption key. Spyware will upload to or download from your computer's files. Password sniffers will try to steal login IDs and passwords, and even sometimes credit card numbers. Malware can spread by sending messages containing malware. This actually happened in the case of the I love you virus, which sent out messages with the subject line, reading, I love you. When Microsoft Outlook users opened the email, it searched their address book and mailed itself to everyone in the address book. This tied up email on the internet for a day or two. And most dangerous of all, it can disable the antivirus and firewall software that's protecting your computer. Malware can also block access to certain websites and redirect a browser to websites that are infected. This can cause slower response times. It can allow hackers to gain remote access to your data or turn your computer into a zombie, a computer that they control remotely. They can link your device to others in a botnet, a network of similarly infected computers that can send out spam or launch a denial of service attack on a website. In a denial of service attack, all these automated traffic bots targeting a website prevents legitimate users from accessing the site, and they can cause massive traffic jams on the internet and on other computer networks. Viruses are computer programs that work a bit like biological viruses, which inject their genetic material into cells, taking over the replication mechanism so they can make a large number of other viruses. When they finish, the host organism's cell bursts open, releasing the newly created viruses. Given the prevalence of antivirus software, they are no longer as great a threat as years ago, but they are still out there. Computer viruses hide themselves in other programs, which can be applications, or even in the operating system itself. After having an opportunity to make copies of itself, which it can then release over a network or on removable storage media like flash drives, it will cause some deleterious effect on the computer. It might erase files or corrupt your hard disk's boot sector, making it difficult to boot up your computer. Trojan horses, which are sometimes simply called Trojans, are viruses that wait for some particular event before unleashing its damage. It could be a date and time. It could be a sequence of commands that the user typed for some other reason. Then the effect is unleashed. The term code injection refers to the process of a virus modifying a file or data stream to include the virus's commands. Computer worms are self-replicating and self-distributing like viruses, but they don't do the kind of damage that viruses do. A mass mailing worm spreads itself by sending a copy of itself to every address in the computer's address book. Worms are less dangerous than viruses. They are programs whose main purpose is to simply make a lot of copies of itself and get them in circulation, usually over networks. But they do not seek to do damage the way viruses do. An internet worm looks for vulnerabilities in operating systems, open communication ports, and JavaScript code in web pages. A worm just like this virtually shut down the internet in October 1988 by flooding it with traffic. It took advantage of a few security loopholes that existed at that time in Unix systems. A file-sharing worm is different. It copies itself into a shared folder with a name that looks harmless. Antivirus software is essential for any PC. It looks out for viruses, Trojan horses, worms, and other kinds of malware. The way most such programs work is to search for a pattern of ones and zeros that uniquely identifies the virus as a particular type of malware. This bit pattern is known as the virus signature. Not all antivirus programs work exclusively by searching for virus signatures. A good number now use heuristic analysis to detect malware. When it runs into suspicious files, it analyzes their behavior and characteristics. The problem with heuristic approaches is that they can lead to false positives, labeling programs as malware, when that may not be the case. There are three main strategies that antivirus programs use. First, they look to repair files by removing the malware contained within them. This is important if the files are important documents or contain crucial data. One problem is that many of the files currently targeted by malware are executable files, where it becomes much more difficult to recognize what belongs to the program and what belongs to the malware. In such a case, using the program is a very bad idea. Another approach is to quarantine the file. It gets isolated in a quarantine folder so it can't be opened by accident. If they have been found to be actually a safe file, they can be moved out of quarantine. Quarantine files should eventually be deleted. Antivirus programs allow the users to determine how long they want to leave a quarantine file in quarantine before deleting it. Most users aren't going to try to retrieve them because of the high risk of damaging other files. As a result, few people will delay deleting quarantine files by more than a few days.